if you can pass on the microphone to the final speaker in this session. We're going to hear an update of what's happening in cryonics in Russia. Now, some of you were hoping, as indeed we all were, to hear from Valerie Pride from Cryarus. She's had a very important engagement, which we can't talk about, but it meant that she was not able to come here. But we are very fortunate that we have Stanislav Polozov, who has his own fascinating experience with cryonics in St. Petersburg and other parts of Russia. He's going to give us his perspectives on Cryarus and expanding the right to life. Welcome, Stanislav.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm presenting here the Russian Moscow company Cryarus, and unfortunately Valeria Pride, she is the chief of Cryarus. She could not come today to make a report, so I will make very short report about latest update, what is going on in Russia. And as I understood from previous speakers, the Russian laws are much more friendly for cryonics than in many countries, and particularly in Spain as well. So we have the working company there. It's not my company, it's a company of our, how to say, co-operators, and since I think that the only reliable way to live long is not to die, yes, so therefore I think the cryonics is the last chance to. So currently company Cryarus has 400 contracts, around 400 contracts, and 65 preserved cryo patients. And it is very short update, therefore I will say just show you several photographs. Yes, this is training of personnel, yes, and training in perfusion of the brain, how it is going on in Cryarus. And this is as well some scientific investigations and as well perfusion of the brain. This is as well preparation of chemical substances, and the patient who is already having bath in liquid nitrogen. And the facilities of the company is several. This is Dior, yes, several such vessels that is made for preservation of people. And international collaboration, because as we see, only international collaboration can be guarantee of guaranteed cryonic process. Because if in some day, maybe even in the United States, the law will become so unfriendly to this kind of preservation, then people will have to move their capacity to some other countries, maybe to Russia, maybe in Russian it will happen. Therefore, international collaboration is very important in this field. Yeah. So, and the contacts of company is this one. Valeria Pride, she is the CEO of Cryarus. And if you will need to talk about maybe some collaboration, maybe about cryonic contracts, then it is good to contact her. And because since it is the only European company that is working on the territory of Europe, and as far as I know, in Asia as well. Yes, because there is no working capacities in Asia that having these services. So thank you very much.
Thank you. No, that was very useful. So can I ask all the speakers to come up to the stage? So Stanislav, stay here on the stage. And we have now got a short chance to dive deeper into some of the areas where we should explore further. So we'll take 3 questions, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll ask all of you to briefly respond to any of the 3 questions, if you've got something to say. Yes?
Okay, excellent presentations, all of you. And I loved, actually, well, all of them, but I love that Alba and then Paul put also the human side, the music, the art is so important to convince people about this. And I also want to remind, we have here Rodolfo Goya, whose team just did the second cryopreservation in Argentina. I think it is still a secret until they take the patient out of Argentina into the USA. But so that you know, I mean, he's doing incredible things. He's in my book as well, because what he's doing is unbelievable. But so that you know what is unbelievable, but it is possible. These things are impossible until they become possible. So, the founders of CryoRus, Danila Medvedev, he came to the conference in Caracas, Venezuela, if you remember. Those of you who were in Venezuela, he came to Venezuela in 2005, and he had only 25 years of age. And he told me, I am starting cryonics facility outside of Moscow. And I said, what? And how old are you? Oh, well, I'm 25, you know. And how are you going to do this? And where are you from? St. Petersburg. Oh, not even from Moscow. Forget it. So I could not believe that he was going to make it. And he did it. You know, right after TransVision 2005. So I have so much admiration for what he has done, what the Russians are doing, and the Cosmist movement is doing. So that is why I propose we have to have a conference in Moscow or in St. Petersburg about these issues. Well, it was not a question, it was a congratulation and admiration for people dedicated to cryonics.
Thank you. Why don't you pass the microphone to Rodolfo?
Okay, this is our questions with a mix of comment. We addressed to Alba, but it's more or less general. It is said that cryonics is expensive. But what is not mentioned is that there are the 2 more important, well-known cryonics facilities are Cryonics Institute and Alcor. And the difference in the cost is 6-fold almost. $35,000 against $200,000. I have some experience, especially with the CI, because I am a CI member. I have seen how they operate. The quality is good. They have the same kind number of patients, more or less, but they can afford to charge much less. So it's not that magically cryonics is expensive. It depends on who is doing the cryonics procedure. So it could be perhaps less expensive, and this is an important thing. And a second comment, very short. I am kind of popular in Argentina because I am the first Argentinian to be cryopreserved. So the media, TV, etc., I am interviewed. So when they ask me, has been a human revived already? I said, yes, it has. Who? There are 1,000 people, humans, walking around the world who started their life as a cryopreserved embryos. So cryonics reanimation is not, the question is whether it is not possible or not. This is the question, yes, it is possible. What we have to ask is when technology will be mature enough to be able to do that in adults. But it is possible, and they have a soul, everything.
Thank you. And let's pass the microphone just behind you. And we'll come to the answers in a minute.
So I've one main question and one very small question afterwards. So I'll start with the big one. So I'm just curious as to various developments you've been tracking with regards to like better cryopreservation chemicals that can basically reduce the toxicity, or they're more effective for vitrification, and various cooling techniques like rapid cooling or cooling using pressurized helium, or basically radiative, homogeneous radiative cooling. That can be done quickly and homogeneously to ensure the technique works well. And in addition to this, like using chemicals where you can reduce the amount of liquid nitrogen to keep the tissue cool, and also nanoparticles to enable rapid and homogeneous.
You come to a question?
Yeah. Have you read about or come across like significant developments in this area in the last few years, kind of that would be an advancement to the like current standard vitrification process I think you've been using since 2001?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you all the chance if you want to answer any of these questions. Why do the costs vary so much? Isn't it enough to tell people, look, there already have been embryos cryopreserved. This proves that the technology works. And what are the enhancements that might be around the corner in terms of better chemicals, better cooling techniques, and so on? Why don't we start with this end and work? Why don't we start with at that end, sorry, and walk backwards, and speak into the microphones? Thanks.
It is the question of the chemicals that you are talking that you want that I reply to you. This is the point.
Yeah.
So the question is which are just to understand properly your question, the question is which are the, let's say, the newest or the best chemicals or waves to recover. Well, I would say that there are three important lines for recovery or for improving cryopreservation of, let's say, human beings or organs. We like to speak about organs instead of human beings. One line is, of course, keeping improving the cryoprotectant and trying to understand how what they call ice blockers work. Ice blockers has been a technology that was discovered by Brian Waugh something like 10 years ago, and then collaborating with Greg Fahey. They are like antifreeze protein, like synthetic antifreeze protein. At that time, they thought that they understood their mechanism, but nowadays they confess that they do not really understand how these ice blockers work. So I think they finally understand how ice blockers work, that would be a very important trend in the chemicals. From the engineering point of view, there is kind of fashion about the role of magnetic nanoparticles. There is a consortium between the University of Minnesota and Harvard, and this consortium thinks that they can solve the problem of organ banking by applying the technology of magnetic induction of nanoparticles. They are having some troubles with the washing of the nanoparticles because they are not so straightforward to wash them out. In fact, in our lab, what we are working with is with microparticles that are much more bigger, and for many purposes, these micro, they are big balls compared with the nano. For many purposes, maybe cryonics as well, can work pretty well. So this is, from my point of view, the two main lines.
And Ramón, how soon do you think some of the results of your research will be applied in the real-world cryonics organizations?
How soon? With the chemical, people has been working since 1984. That was the original work of Greg Fahey, trying to improve the chemicals. That was it is a steady research, and it is difficult to foresee. With the microparticles, I think I can safely say that in the term of 1 year, we will see several biological systems, of course not human being, but several biological systems. I'm playing with some of them that use micro or nanoparticles.
And what would make that research go faster?
Say me again?
What would make this research go faster so that it could be applied more quickly in commercial organizations?
What to do to make it faster?
Yes.
Well, as can be figured out, money is always a problem. So money, with money you can make anything, probably money.
Alba, do you have any answers to any of the questions that were raised?
Okay. Rodolfo, you asked me what is the difference, why there are so much difference between the prices for Alcors and Cryonics. And well, that's something we are already working on because we don't have all the answers yet, okay? So, but at the beginning, Cryonics is not only the price of the, Rudy also told me that is not the total cost of the Cryonic contract is not the total cost, in fact, because depending on where you live, you will have to add transportation cost, and also eventually maybe a standby team and some other expenses like maybe staying in a hospital nearby or so. So the truth is that the price of Cryonics at the end can be quite close to the one of Alcors, okay, depending on many other things. So, okay, so because when you get an insurance cost, you will see that probably the amount of money you have to pay every month is almost the same. So with this insurance, it's true that there are many people that will be available to pay for it, but it's true that there are a lot of people who is interested and won't be. And it's true that both institutions say that they use the money they get in kind of different ways. They put in funds that this type of fund doesn't work the same way. I don't know if I have answered your question.
Thanks. Paul, do you have anything to add to any of these points?
On the science of this, not really.
Microphone.
Yeah, on the science of this, I don't really have a lot to add. I'm not familiar with the costs of materials, focusing more on the marketing of things. What I can say is that the costs of scientific innovation always come down. The original cell phone was phenomenally expensive in modern day terms. And what is expensive today will not be expensive in the future. I can be virtually certain of that.
And what about the argument that we can already point to lots of people walking around who've been cryonically preserved as embryos? Is that sufficient to persuade people to sign up?
I don't think they perceive it that way. I mean, embryos are preserved, yes, that's true.
It may make them a bit more open-minded to the possibility.
Well, they might be, but people don't perceive embryos as being sentient beings. They may be a life. There's a big controversy about when they become a life. Yeah. But as far as memories, as far as consciousness, as far as sentience goes, I think there's a strong feeling in many people's minds that they're not there yet.
Okay. Ben, anything to add?
I was president of the Cryonics Institute for 9 years, so I'm very aware of why there was a price difference. The Cryonics Institute, the Alcor requires SST, standby stabilization and transport, for everybody who signs up, so that's included in the price. The Cryonics Institute does not include that, and many people don't get that, or it's do it yourself. But many Cryonics Institute people sign up for suspended animation services, which adds $60,000 to the cost. So if you add $60,000 to the $28,000 or $35,000, you get a price that's closer to Alcor's price for the total cost. And anyway, that's the cost thing. As I say, I was president of the Cryonics Institute. President of the Cryonics Institute for 9 years, but since 2012, I've been working for the Life Extension Foundation as Director of Research Oversight. The Life Extension Foundation it's been renamed, but I won't go into that. The Life Extension Foundation has been spending $6 to $8 million a year on cryonics research, much more than any other organization in the world by large margin. And as Director of Research Oversight, I guess I've been very concerned about the fact that we have suspended animation, aside from doing SST, Spin Animation Incorporation, doing liquid ventilation research, and CCR, Critical Care Research, also doing liquid ventilation research. So in June of this year, liquid ventilation, I should mention, normally we cool a patient by putting them in an ice bath and putting a thumper on them and getting the blood circulating to help get the blood cooled from the external part of the body and circulated throughout the body to cool the patient. But this is very inefficient. It takes about 3 hours to cool a patient by that means, from body temperature down to about 10 or 20 degrees Celsius. Whereas with liquid ventilation, you put this cold perfluorocarbon fluid into their lungs, and so they've got that going in their lungs while they're also receiving cardiopulmonary support, artificial circulation in the ice bath, and the cooling rate is about a half an hour compared to about 3 hours. So it's much faster. And cooling is very important, especially in the initial stage of cryonics, the cooling, because there's a lot of ischemic damage that happens. You know, every 10 degrees Celsius that you go down in temperature, the metabolic rate is cut in half. And
so to an extent, you get what you pay for if there's risks with the lower cost solutions.
I'm just talking about the technology at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, the point is that what's come out of this is that the critical care research method of doing liquid ventilation is much more efficient than the suspended animation version. Hopefully, we'll be able to cut that funding for that project soon. And actually, the Life Extension Foundation doesn't even need to pay for this, because Alcor got a $5 million grant from some rich person who made a lot of money from cryptocurrencies, and part of that $5 million grant is being used by Alcor to improve the critical care research liquid ventilation system so that it can be automated and used in the field. And hopefully this will be in the field on cryonics cases within the next year. And so that's the biggest development in cryonics technology in the last year from my point of view.
That's encouraging, thanks. Stanislav, do you have anything to add on either on costs, or you want to comment on the possibilities for cryptocurrencies to transform the funding or the operations of cryonics?
Well, I don't know about possibilities of cryptocurrencies. Sorry, once more. I don't know about possibilities of cryptocurrencies or any other currencies to finance this field, because I think cryptocurrency or normal currency doesn't depend if you have to store your cryo patients in cryonic way. I think the main difference in prices, for example, between American prices and what we can see in Russia, is because the main price is the salary of staff and the support of infrastructure to store patients. Yes, and the answer is simple, that the salaries are about 5 times, 6 times lower than in Russia, and the support of infrastructure is about the same, lower in Russia as well. Therefore, it is the difference in prices. I think this is the main reason. All other can, of course, we can optimize, we can try to do different ways of optimization, but I think if it would be in India, for example, where we have prices even 10 times less than Russia or something like this, that will be even cheaper. But there is too hot in India to have cryonic company.
So,
Can I have a short comment, very short?
Very short, please. Thank you. There's a microphone there.
Thank you.
And then we'll get a question from Valdemar.
Yes, the services of suspended animation only apply within the continental USA. So all patients around the world that send, like in Argentina, bodies or brains to Alcor have still to pay $200,000 for the body, despite of the fact that they don't receive the services of suspended animation. They do?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's I mean, Natasha, do you want to make a very quick reply to that? I mean, we might have to take this outside. But
yeah. Okay, let's take a look at the technology and the science. Alcor has invested a fair amount of money in having the top-notch vitrification facilities, to having the top-notch doers that new ones are being designed. The research and development and the team at Alcor is, bar none, the best in the world. And it makes an example of how far we can reach and go as far as really taking cryonics seriously in developing research and getting the funding that's necessary. I'm not going to argue. I think that any argument would need to be with Dr. Moore, who is the CEO of Alcor and has an understanding of the economics of it. And certainly, no one is walking away making a hell of a lot of money at Alcor. In fact, Alcor's main concern is the safety of its patients over time. Thank you.
Thanks. Valdemar, do you have a quick question? Yes, can we get the mic over? Jose is pulling rank here.
Yeah, because I actually didn't ask a question before, and I have two quick ones. Anyway, there will be time afterwards, but I think this is important. Cryonics is really growing internationally. As you know, not only do we have 2 patients in Argentina, there are several patients in Australia. Also, Oregon Cryonics has several patients as well, and probably Ben might comment, we have the first patient now in Miami, in Florida, in Osiris Back to Life. So this is only going to grow, but we have to keep the standards, and I'm very worried because in Russia, Valeria told me that there are some criminal, fraudulent, crazy people advertising non-real things, and this is happening in other places, not just in Russia. Maybe Alba might want to comment on that too. So I think those are important things. This is growing, but there are going to be coming crazy people. So we have to be very careful. We have to have standards. We don't want to have problems.
Okay, and Valdemar, can we get a microphone up there too? Just at the back. And so the question there is, should we be pushing forward with international standards and regulations, or should we be letting 1,000 flowers bloom?
Thank you. Actually, it ties into Jose's question, namely that I'm a transhumanist, I'm interested in cryonics, and I want to get my cryonics contract. But the problem is, even though if I live in a country where we actually have a cryonics association, we have a problem of information. What are the laws in my specific country? Is it allowed? Is it possible? What opportunities? And I think Mr. Spiegel had a very good talk about marketing. And I think it's a marketing problem because people not only don't know about cryonics, but also they are put back by a very unfamiliar legislation, the legislation of death, which they don't want to come into contact with. That's why they have funerary agencies and religious services that take care of those parts of death. So how do we give good legal information, good legal advice to Europeans regarding cryonics?
So, Paul, do you want to start off on that? I guess part of the problem is that the law may not be tested. The law may be written down, but it may not be tested, and it may be applied in different ways.
That's quite true. The laws are, of course, different in every jurisdiction. If somebody dies in the United States or in Venezuela or in Peru or you name it, there are different rules that apply based primarily on the location of death. As we mentioned, there are people who are thinking about setting up, if you will, pre-cryonic facilities where you can go and choose a physician-assisted death and then be dealt with, say, in Switzerland. Those laws are very predictable. If somebody were to do that, you could know what was going on. But most people don't have the luxury of choosing the time and place of their death. As such, it, I think, will be necessary to build a current and constantly updated database of rules applying in various jurisdictions, such that somebody walks in and says, I'm in Moldova and I have 3 days to live. I'd like to know whether I can be cryopreserved.
Does such a database exist yet?
Not that I know of.
Who should be creating it?
I beg your pardon?
Who should be creating it?
Well, I think that either the individual cryopreservation companies should have their own databases, or if the databases become sufficiently interconnected, there should be a trade organization that should do this.
Okay, and we've only time for quick answers from the panel on the question of regulations or standards. Should we be going after this more aggressively and doing it more quickly, or is it time just to stand back and let the natural forces of free market competition figure out what the right solutions are? Any comments on that from the panel? Final remarks?
Any comment about what?
Do you think we should be going faster for regulations and standards for the practice of cryonics to prevent I think we heard cowboys or criminal elements from advertising services and then letting people down terribly?
To go faster for regulations and laws and these things. I am a scientist and if you ask me something about technology, I can answer you. If you ask me something else.
I think we all need to become at least a bit knowledgeable about these market and legal issues as well. But fair enough. No, maybe others do. Ben, you've got an answer?
Yeah, the greatest disaster in cryonics was so far as the Chatsworth, California, Cryonics Society of California case, which happened in the late 1970s, in which 10 people were basically, because of the fraudulent seemingly fraudulent behavior of the owner, Robert Nelson, or I don't know whether he's fraudulent or not, but anyway, the patients were all thawed out, and it was discovered, and it was just like the space shuttle explosion or something like that, as far as how it affected the perception of cryonics. And we certainly don't want to see another Chatsworth, and the other problem, but this idea of creating regulations or some standards, I just don't think that's going to be possible. Getting cryonicists to work together is like herding cats. For some reason, cryonics is life or death, and if and everybody has different standards, and the cryonicists, you just can't. They just don't work together. There's so much fighting that happens. We've got two organizations in the United States, and for years and years, Alcor was saying that the Cryonics Institute was substandard. So if you're going to have standards, and the Alcor is setting the standards, there's only one organization in the world that's going to meet those standards, and that's Alcor. And,
so maybe it has to be done by some independent third-party body. Final comments, Alba?
Yes. About no. Okay, it's true that there is not legal regulation in no country. So most people who ask for it, we don't have any answer because the government doesn't know even about it, and they don't. It's what I said in my presentation. That's why I think the non-profit organizations should have to work to make government to be involved, because I think this will be good for everyone, not only for private companies, but for non-profit organizations, because if you have a legal systems that assist you in this and give you some rules in the sense of protecting the patients, I think that will be good for everyone. Okay, so, and it's not that we have to take the debate even to the parliament. I think that will be good. I think, like in these days, I don't know if you know that they are debating in the Spanish Parliament the law of euthanasia, which really will be a really good thing. So that's a start, and I think if through a social demand to ask politics to get involved and take this problem, because if you like it or not, cryonics is coming. So, and it will be here, and as say José Luis Cordeiro, is growing and growing and growing, and people is getting more interest. So, to protecting all ourselves and the people who is interested, I think we have to involve politics and governments.
Stanislav, any final comments?
Well, I just have some consideration that we have the same society resistance than when we try to offer to society life extension. This is absolutely the same nature, and people just resist because of old style thinking. That's it. I don't know how to overcome it.
Gradually, the resistance to life extension is fading. So maybe the resistance to cryonics will fade too, but a bit later on. And Paul, final comment.
Yes, I think that at some point it may be time for an international convention on the subject. People die everywhere, and nobody knows necessarily where they're going to be when they die. If they are signed up for cryonics in, say, the United States, and they happen to have the good fortune to die in French Polynesia, they should know what international standards would apply so that people could be taken care of pretty well everywhere.
But we heard it's like herding cats, but maybe we need some people to help with herding cats. It's a special skill, and we can get on with it and organize it despite tendencies.
If I could, international conventions, international cooperation is often like herding cats. We see that every day. It can be done.
Well, actually, I don't know which standards should be, because we don't know yet how to defreeze these patients, and nobody did it yet. And maybe even we will not be able to defreeze these people for the biological life, but maybe we will restore the personality in digital way. Yes, nobody knows now. But anyway, standards, we should try to preserve patients as precise as possible for the highest level of precision.
We may not be able to agree what the best practice is, but we may be able to agree that certain practices are bad, and we wish to discourage them, and we wish to tell people that if they go with a certain organization, they're likely to have particular bad practices. We must wind up now. I want to thank all the panel. Let's give them an applause for sharing their wisdom.